Hello and welcome. We have Dr. Satyajit Rath from National Institute of Immunology with us to discuss certain issues which have come out recently both in the papers and in scientific journals. Satyajit, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
There's this very interesting paper which has come recently in Science which talks about what kind of migrations have taken place in Asia. And there have been these two models which have been there, one which said there's a northern route and a southern route. Now this paper seems to throw a lot of light on this, and it seems to suggest that's really largely the southern route. What is your take on this?
Well, the paper actually came out 2 days ago in Science. And it's an interesting paper in a variety of ways. In the first place, although it is a group of scientists who are part of the worldwide human genome mapping project, this is a Pan-Asian consortium. There are no Western scientists in this consortium. And indeed, in the long list of 90+ authors representing 40-odd institutions, there are no Western G7 nation representatives. This is striking in itself, and people have been quoted as saying that Asian science has come of age as a consequence of this. Now, that may be overstatement a little bit.
Some kind of a South-South cooperation.
But some level of sophisticated science arising from South-South cooperation has certainly been shown to be feasible. This is, I think, even without the hype, a meaningful step. The second issue is that it uses a methodology that is related to but different from other methodologies used to look at human DNA in recent years that very many groups at the edge of this field have been using. And that is, they've been looking at 50,000 odd single point variations in the entire stretch of human DNA, rather than focusing on specific known locations within the DNA, which is what many of the earlier studies have done. So this is both a different approach, and as a different approach is a somewhat more comprehensive and unbiased approach. It has its limitations.
Why is it something which is different and gives, in your view, more objective results?
So it is different in the sense that it doesn't rely on prior experience of where changes and variations may lie. If you go by the prior experience, then you're only looking at places in the entire DNA stretch where you expect changes to be. You don't look at other places where you may find unexpected changes. And in that sense, it's a different approach. Clearly, since you're looking at single point variations rather than whole sequences, it has its own limitations. Nonetheless, it's an interesting approach. Other point of real interest and substance in the paper is that it tests a very scholarly academic point of debate about what the geographical trajectory of human migration out of Africa has been. So there is a general model that human migration out of Africa began at the northeastern end of Africa, crossover into West Asia, and then from West Asia, in a variety of directions, humanity has migrated across the world. For the peopling of Asia, there has been a certain amount of scholarly debate between two models. One where the coastal route from West Asian coasts, South Asian coasts into Southeast Asia, further up the coast of China has been one route, and across the steppes of Central Asia has been the other route. This paper is interesting in that it suggests that for extreme East Asian populations, the Chinese coastal populations, the putative Central Asian route has not been a major contributor. It's almost as though the coastal progression of humanity over between 100,000 years ago to somewhere around 30, 40, 50,000 years ago has been the predominant route. Now, why is this interesting? It's interesting for two reasons. One, it settles in some provisional fashion and debate amongst scholars about how migrations may have happened. But more important than that, the paper actually provides the ability to look at very large numbers, relatively speaking, of Asian genotypes, and to begin, therefore, a comprehensive cataloging and database of uniquely Asian genomic variations.
There are about 1900 people they have looked at. So it's also in terms of the data collected, in terms of the number of locations they have looked at, in terms of the number of people involved and the institutions. It's a very, very major effort.
It is indeed.
So in that sense, it can be considered to be some kind of a landmark Asian, at least intervention in this area.
It certainly is. There is an India-specific set of peculiarities in the paper as well. In the first place, amongst all these Asian populations that have been looked at, and it must be admitted, India is the most westerly population that has been looked at. It is only the Indian population that shows connectivity to the so-called European, Indo-European genotypes, which for both some of the authors of this study, as well as for interested readers of the field at large, is not terribly surprising, but it's nice that consistencies arise. The second, of course, is that there are Indian authors on this study. The Director General of CSIR is amongst them. And therefore it has been hyped to a certain extent in the media as Indian science and an achievement in Indian science. And I would argue that rather than looking at it as an achievement of Indian science, it might be more useful to think of it as a sign of the maturity of Indian science, that it can engage transnationally, and it can engage not simply transnationally with the West in pursuit of Western recognition, but also, as you said earlier, South-to-South cooperation in scientifically sophisticated fashion. I think that's meaningful.
Satyajit, that brings me to the other point, that there has been a lot of hype recently about one individual being genotyped, and this has been made out to be a major achievement in science. Do you think this is a major achievement?
Now there's an interesting story there. So here's the detail. In the first place, we're not talking about genotyping an individual. A genotype is when you have the entire sequence and you identify unique fingerprint points of variation. That's a genotype. But that doesn't mean that you know the entire sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whereas what has been done by the Institute for Genomics and Integrative Biology here in Delhi, which is a CSIR institution, is the actual sequencing of the entire genome of one individual from India, as it happens apparently from Jharkhand, from newspaper reports at least. Now, this is what has been, I gather, announced on the floor of Parliament, both in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, as an Indian scientific achievement. Is this a major achievement? Well, it's not in the strict scientific sense. Companies can do this, companies in the West can do this for a price, and the price is not extraordinary. And it's coming down all the time. So what's so great about it? The real difficulty I have is one individual being completely sequenced. In what way exactly does it advance the cause of science in terms of understandings, new understandings? And I may have missed something, but I'm not sure that I see it.
You know, if this is something which has been hyped out of proportion, is it the media which is ignorant? Or is it the scientists hyping their work in out of proportion of its worth in the media? Which would you really hold responsible in this case?
So there's a situation in which one ends up saying, "Ke ek haath se tali nahi bajti." You end up having a situation where scientists feel that in order to get money and perhaps personal recognition to do the work that they do, which may be quite interesting work, it is essential in the prevailing system for them to provide media hype, to provide publicity, to provide talking points. On the other hand, we have media which, as I have been told, occasionally indulges the fantasy that in fact it is detrimental to good science journalism to know any science. That's a self-fulfilling evil prophecy that we keep seeing instances of over and over again.
Thanks, Satyajit. It's been a very interesting discussion. Hope to have you back for more such discussions.
Thank you.